And we're back with more motorcycle content. Another headache, of course, but I got lucky. I don't think this bike's meant to be a headache at all. It's literally a cosmetically challenged bike, which is my favorite, because that means you don't have to pull the motor. Biggest mechanical thing I have to do on this bike is change the rotors out. That's, pulling the front tire and loosening a couple bolts. Last CBR1000 I had, which actually I got for the same price as this, and it was 4 years older, had a blown motor. And I still make good money with that bike, but I spent 2-3 weeks and I had to actually pull the motor apart twice, hoping that this bike is a different story. Let's get into it. So this 2008 CBR1000 has a bit of a problem, and that is that I haven't seen it run yet. Bought it, but I've never seen it run. I've never seen it crank. It didn't have a battery in it, and quite frankly, I didn't really care if it ran. I guessed that it ran. There's a 95% chance that it runs, but I never have seen it run or seen it turn over. And the reason I didn't care whether or not it ran is because this bike, I only paid $1,000 for it, and this bike is worth well over $1,000, even if it doesn't. Today, I want to try to throw a battery into it and figure out what all these do and hopefully see if we'll run. So the first thing I'm gonna do here is strip off all the plastics, tank cover, the side piece, this piece here, and a piece is at the bottom, just so I can get a better look at all parts of the bike, make sure there's no cracks in the cases, get a better look at the frame, get a better look at the underneath of this bike, make sure the tank didn't shift, make sure the subframe doesn't need replacing, and this will go from. Okay, so now that I've got the plastic off, tank cover off, this side piece, you can kind of get a better idea of what's going on here. For example, you see a bunch of rocks. Looks like obviously this bike has been flipped. Now, another thing you'll notice here is heat shield. This heat shield is OEM. It really looks like, if you look closely, that it's never been tampered with. Now, here's a couple of instances where this makes sense. For me, for example, I'm a garage mechanic. Don't really have any training. I just kind of work out of my garage. Typically, I wouldn't put this heat shield back in. Like I said, I'm not trained. I don't really care about this heat shield. So if I was to be working on this bike, say change the air filter or do a valve adjustment on it, this would probably get left out. I wouldn't put this back in. However, so now the fact that it is in, that means A, nobody's been in this bike. Nobody's ever tampered with it. Nobody's changed the air filter. Nobody's changed the valves, or adjusted the valves rather. Or two, the air filter's been changed and things have been done to it, but it's been done by somebody who's trained to put this piece back on. So this is just kind of like a context clue as to the status of the bike. You can kind of hypothesize and say, okay, A, either nobody's been in here, or B, somebody trained has been in here. If that wasn't there, that would go to show that somebody who didn't know what they were doing didn't put it back together properly. And another thing you can see after pulling this tail off is if you look at the subframe, it is slightly bent. I'm trying to think whether or not it's fixable. A lot of times, if you loosen the 2 mounting bolts, or the 4 mounting bolts rather, you can actually shift it, because basically it just kind of moves inside of it. There. Loosen those, it might be able to find its home again. Not, there are some tricks to straighten a subframe. This is a subframe on my track button. You can see just how, look at that. It's still strong, it's still structural, you can sit on it. I raced like this for a couple of weekends, or a weekend rather, and it's not too big of a deal. Well, what do you know? I rigged up the battery. When I turn the key on, boom, we've got power to the dash. Now this is a good sign. On most of the components that plug in, the main concern I'm having now is the vacuum lines. I don't really know, without having the bike set up, it's kind of hard to know where these all go. But I'm gonna just try to see if it'll run without these vacuum lines hooked up. I really just want to hear it run for like maybe 2 seconds. Make sure it's not like ticking, make sure it's not blown up, and then we'll go from there. Well, it looks like we have a crank but no start situation. It sounds to me like it's not pulling a vacuum. You can kind of hear the air coming out, so I guess it's time to run some more diagnostics. Okay, so I think I realized why it's not running. This is the tilt sensor right in here. This little piece here is the tilt sensor, and that wasn't plugged in, obviously. I didn't realize that was a tilt sensor because I'm used to the tilt sensors being back here. Let's plug that in, and that should fix our problem. That should definitely get it to run. So your tilt sensor is arguably one of the most important
pieces to look for. So basically this sensor knows when the bike isn't upright or where it should be within, like, say this is up right here. Anything past 70 degrees, I believe, or close to 90 is going to trigger the sensor and your bike won't run, which is actually a good thing. It's like I've crashed this bike a bunch and you don't want it to keep running. If it keeps running after it's tilted, that's not good. Okay, so I hear the fuel pump prime. I think it's gonna run now. Wow. This thing sounds like a fucking dream, man. It's smooth. There's no sounds coming from the motor. This thing fucking fires right up. And the exhaust sounds absolutely gnarly. Let's just say I may be keeping this bike for... This thing is gonna be sweet. Wow, how cool. So we got it running. It's got a fluctuating idle. Seems to idle high. That's more than likely going to be due to these vacuum leaks. It also doesn't have any inputs from the solenoids for the air intakes, so that's going to affect idle and whatnot. So this is awesome. This is a good day. Well, that was just way too easy. Kind of hoping it would challenge me just a little more. Yeah, shit. Now I'm gonna be bored, man. Maybe I'll have to buy another broken bike. But now I just gotta wait for parts, bearings and stuff. But in the meantime, I'll probably make another video because I have to fix the subframe. It's twisted, so I'm gonna try to bend that out. And then also I have to loosen the engine mounts and reconfigure the motor, because you can see how not okay that is. So if you guys like this content, subscribe. I'd like to make more videos because I think you may be able to learn something. You can make good money doing this. I know a lot of people are looking for side hustles. As long as you stay out of my territory, of course, you know, you could learn some things and make some money, have some fun while you're doing it. And yeah, appreciate you guys watching.